Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is September the 6th in the year of our Lord 2023. We have another set of Republican primary debates that are coming up here within the next couple of weeks. And in the meantime, nothing has really changed as far as meaningful legislation being brought to the floor that will improve and or help the lives of American people, American workers, Americans in general. And sadly, in this day and time, as a republic, as a new nation, we're 247 years in on a country that was founded in genocide and made in slavery. And at this critical juncture in our nation's history, 247 years in, regrettably, we're dealing with the politics of race more than ever. And going into the next presidential election, it's kind of a roadmap or blueprint, if you will, from then to now as to why we are where we are right now in history and where we should be trying to go. Now we've had, less than 10 years ago, well, as you were, a little more than 10 years ago, America elected the first African-American president in the nation's history. And shortly thereafter, with 2 terms being served for a total of 8 years, then his successor, former President Donald J. Trump, came out and gained a lot of traction, being a flawed candidate, bigoted, sexual harassment, violence encouraging campaigner who actually made it into the Oval Office. And without a former President Obama, then we feel here at Soluble, could have never been a former President Donald J. Trump, a man who was so flawed and just so out of touch with what it takes to be president of the United States of America. Now, the reason why we have the position we have here at Soluble, that we're dealing with politics of race at this current time in our political history, is because Obama's successor didn't seem to have a problem with policy, with the former President Obama's dedication to country, ability to serve, willingness to serve, commitment to the job. No problem with his, with something like inability to be presidential on a world stage. Seemed to be out of touch with American values. Nothing of the sort. The sole problem that the former president, Donald J. Trump, seemed to have with the fact that we elected the first African-American president in the United States of American history is the fact that he was just that, a Negro. We didn't hear in those accusations of phony birth certificates, not really being a real citizen, having fake documents and documents. We never heard any complaints about the president's handling of the job, how he was doing, on the job as actual president of the United States. And that's our mission and goal somewhere here at Soluble, is to get back on track to electing the best person for the job. If it just so happens to be an African-American that's elected for the best man of the job, so be it. If it just so happens to be somebody of Hispanic descent, Jewish descent, so be it. America works best when we put our best and brightest forward, and not, our most bigoted, our most mean-spirited, the one who is most candid with rude things being said out of their mouth. That's not, what elevates us as a country and moves us forward as a country and citizens of country. And so here we are at this point in time now. When you look at the 2 former presidents, and you want to judge on the merits, which is where we should be. Which is where we should be, and which is where we are here at Soluble. We're judging here on the merits, the ability to, stand out and do this job, in a favorable view. Look at, both former presidents and their job performance. Who was most presidential? Who seemed to be the one most educated and qualified to actually do the job of governing a nation so large, so complicated, with laws, with systems of checks and balances. What moves America forward? That is the prevailing thought, here at Soluble. Are we going to look at our presidents, whether they're running for office, whether we're looking back in history, at former presidents? Are we going to look at judging our presidents based on their physical appearance, their skin tone, their ethnicity? Does that make us better as a country when we're putting, our not so best and brightest forward based on opinion, based on, whatever comes up, comes out type of thing? And from a Republican point of view, that's fine. They're willing to roll the dice on a flawed candidate as such. And here we are, and we have to get out of this mire that we're wallowing in. So here at Soluble, in an attempt to move the nation forward, as a country, whether it's politically, spiritually, individually, as a group, are we going to be stuck in the politics of race forever? Now, we're 247 years in as a republic, as we stated here at Soluble. Now, there's been much bloodshed in America's past, much innocent bloodshed, much brutality in America's past, in the making, the founding, the shaping, if you will, of the America that we enjoy today. And the question is, do we owe it to those who have come before us, who endured such horrors, suffered such hardships, fought in wars, world wars, local wars, in order to make America the great country that it is today? Shouldn't we, as a country now, with those of us who are in the land of the living in a free country, we honor those who made that sacrifice, who've come before us, in all of their flaws, trying to shape a vision, to bring forth a vision of what they see as a country that is a great form of government and a way of living and or governing for mankind? How do we reward that? Now, our position here at Soluble is that we should reward it by putting the best man forward for the job. And this is what the Democratic Party has done. Now, to that 90-something plus percentile who is firmly entrenched in Democratic corners and in Democratic circles, listen real closely. There's always been a check or a pushback, if you will, in America from, Negroes gaining power, or maybe, racist Caucasian America feeling as if, they're getting too much power. There's always been pushback. And this is where we are now. This is where we are, sadly. We had the first African-American president in American history. And then along comes, in rapid succession, Donald J. Trump, playing the race card, doing everything he could to delegitimize former President Barack Obama, simply because of his name, his origin of birth, and so forth and so on. And as we stated, nothing came up or stood out as far as the former president, saying, he was bad for policy with energy. He was weak on foreign policy. He was bad for America because his economic ideas were just terrible and they were bankrupting Americans. Everyday working people were complaining. Obamacare was terrible. Nobody signed up. It was a flat out failure. They were holding people at gunpoint to sign up for the Affordable Care Act. You heard none of this. You heard none of it. It simply was a pushback based on the president's origin of birth, the president's racial ethnicity. And so we voted it out after 4 years. We gave MAGA a chance, even though we were very skeptical as a nation, very cynical as a nation. We gave it 4 years with help from the Electoral College. We very much know that he lost the popular vote to former Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton. So with the help of the Electoral College, we had to, as a majority population, and we're in a country where majority rules. And, as I said, the president lost the popular vote, the former president, Donald John Trump. And so, we took a backseat or a standby approach to take a look and see, what MAGA, Make America Great Again, was going to look like. What does the idea originate from, to make America great again? How did America become not a great nation? Was it, from 2008 to 2016? We don't know where the president was going there. But we know that, because of the former president, Barack Obama's race, there was, the major pushback from the Republican Party, which, by the way, is a party that, adamantly stands on the defense that it's not a racist party. And we're better as a country with a vibrant and healthy two-party system. It's good for debate. It's good for, getting things solved and getting things done, from two differing opinions, putting their heads together and coming up with one best solution that works for America. Now, we know that there are plenty of candidates or all of the above candidates whose last name is not Trump, who are better qualified to serve and ready to lead this nation right now than the current front runner by all polling indicators from the Republican primaries. And that just so happens to be the former president, Donald J. Trump, is leading in the polls right now to be on the debate stage come, next year with the current sitting president, Joseph R. Biden. Now, we're here to solve, from telling it like it is first and foremost. We have to call it like we see it here, balls and strikes, in order to solve. Now, we've stated cases and situations from past incidents where, Democrats were on the hot seat, if you will, to defend democracy, to speak out against wrongdoing, to take action against corruption. And, by all historical indicators, they did very well. There was some guy who was out of control, who was far left, or just hell bent left in his thinking. Excuse me, shot up charity softball game here a couple years ago. And he seemed to take aim mostly at Republican congressmen and or senators. And the Democrats come right out and denounced it. First and foremost, let me make it unequivocally clear that we're not a party that supports, this kind of dissent, this kind of, discourse where we have an agreement. We're a country that debates our differences, and we sit down and hash things out through compromise and sound debate. So there's no comparison here. But of course, you're going to hear about, a two-tier system. And, regrettably, we have a lot of things going on that's affecting the nation and the world today. And we've already called it here at Soluble. We don't claim to be, one who can speak into the future, but in our heart of hearts, we felt here at Soluble that, during the course of the last midterm election, that the Republicans got any kind of foothold in a majority, that we would have investigations versus legislation. And so, currently that's where we're at. We have nothing to report new. We know that the debt ceiling is coming up again, to raise the debt limit, to pay America's bills is coming up soon. But as far as meaningful legislation, meaningful bills being brought to the floor for a vote from our colleagues on the right, we just don't see it. We don't see it. We don't see them pushing back on, policy from the Biden administration. We don't see it. We don't see the candidates, they're saying what they'll do, but they're not telling us why their idea is better than the Democrats' idea. I mean, it's the same talk. Oh, these are woke policies. It's just a talking point. Explain it, break it down, and show us. The Inflation Reduction Act is working. It may not be working as good as we want it to, as fast as we want it to. But we know that things in Washington, D.C. move slow. And so, speaking of moving slow, I'd just like to take this quick moment to remind everyone that this is why we need to rock the vote come 2024. Now, we have some off-year elections that are coming up. Right now, we can't sit here and state with definition or definitiveness which states they are, but we do have some off-year elections coming up here in the fall of the year. As a matter of fact, here in a couple of months, if I'm not mistaken. And we need Democratic voters more than ever to get fired up because the Republic is at stake here. It's coming more from the Republican side. This thing where, we're dealing with we're stuck right now in the politics of race. So-called minorities, they're invading or they're taking over America. They're threatening America's well-being. Democrats, we need to, get fired up and stay focused on putting the best person that we feel who is qualified to lead America, regardless of what the critics are saying. All of this is outside noise. We hear, our colleagues from the right stating, that 70% of Americans don't want to see, the current president, run for office again. Well, who is this? Are these 70% of Republicans? Is this a 70% conservative opinion? They won't tell you that. They won't tell you that. But they'll continue to spread misinformation because the goal is to keep you confused. So you have to ask yourself, and Democrats, we must realize what's at stake too, because here we have a party, Republican Party, that, why do they want to mislead? Why do they want to spread so much misinformation? You have this gang of 18 or so with the RICO statute they're facing in the state of Georgia now. Where are they going to lead us if we give them the majority again? If we give them back the reins of power? What is it that stands out about this former president that makes him in the eyes and minds of Republican voters? What makes him so qualified? What can they state? Now they're saying he's coming with baggage. Now you have some trying to bring in the 14th Amendment to keep him off the ballots in certain states to just qualify him from running. And it's the right thing to do. We're going to look to see if any of the candidates on stage are championing the same thing, to try to find some way to stop this former president, who is a constitutional menace, from being qualified to run for office. Everything is on the line, as we know. As we know it, when it comes to social harmony, when it comes to being able to trust in government, and right now we have the former president who's by all polling indicators the lead candidate for the Republican nomination, who wants us to trust nothing about government, who is telling us that, they're coming after us. He's just in the way. But yet, nothing on the debate stage to break this down and explain it to you. So, Democrats, I know that we're confident in our guy, Joseph R. Biden. We're confident that, he has the ability to lead the country. And we're also confident in knowing that if he feels as if he can't be at his best to lead, he will, voluntarily cede power. And it's up to us as Democrats to rally around our next best candidate who we think is qualified to lead the country, regardless of what the Republicans are saying. And this is one of our weak points going into the 2024 election. We cannot have been voted into a majority as we are now, in controlling 2/3 of government as Democrats, and then we're letting the Republican Party control the narrative. We're letting the Republican Party influence what we do, what we think. As we've stated here a couple of podcasts back, you have Attorney General Garland. He's appointing special counsel because he feels like it's necessary, or because he's under some kind of pressure. He's appointed Mr. Weiss to lead a special counsel investigation. Is that what the American people voted for? The vast majority. And so, with Republicans, they're not going to stop. They're not going to hesitate to try to continue to control the narrative, even when we have power. And so, what we have to ensure that our political leaders do, Democrats, my fellow Democrats, is make sure that our elected Democratic officials are listening to the American people and not the Republican Party or Republican politicians. And they're good at it. Let's face it, they're good at, hammering home a negative talking point, a talking point that's filled with false innuendos and propaganda. It doesn't matter. They're good at hammering a message home. And so, here we are. Nothing to legislate, even though, we're dealing with, economic issues. We're dealing with, foreign power challenges. We're dealing with, climatological issues. COVID may be trying to rear its ugly head again. Prescription drug prices, the military. We have all these things that are going on. And yet we have a Republican Party that feels that the best way forward for America right now is to investigate. Fruitless investigations. We've seen it before. And so we're not going to get out of this. It's a shameful waste, a blatant shameful waste of taxpayers' money to have these investigations that go nowhere. And it's a matter of, why now? If Hunter was doing these things all those years ago, whether it was when his father was vice president, whether it's when his father was in the Senate, what is the message that our fellow Republicans are sending here? That, when you was doing these corrupt things, it was all right and it was fine. We would look the other way unless your father, tried to become or became president. So, regardless of whether it's crooked or not, we're only going to go after it if your father becomes president. And so what kind of message is that saying? As long as President Biden didn't seek the Oval Office, that Hunter could just run amok and run wild, with foreign investors from Ukraine, China, or what have you, and just raking all these, corrupt dollars for what they are calling the Biden crime family. It just doesn't jive. But yet, here we are. And to, my fellow Democrats, let it be a lesson to you. To that 90-something plus percentile, let it be a lesson to you. You have seats at the table now. This 90-something plus percentile African Americans who vote Democratic throughout the elections, election after election, whether it's local, state, or federal. You have seats at the table. And so, being at this critical juncture that we're in, as far as the politics of race, the Republican Party want to see that 90 something plus percentile and other so-called minorities governed, not, having seats at the table to be involved in government, but they want to see them governed, not having no power to govern, but they want to govern over you. You have nothing there. You have nothing there. Now, I'm not sure what Larry Elder's profession was. I know I've seen him on Fox News as a commentator several times. Didn't even make the debate stage as an African American candidate. Tim Scott, Senator Scott, he made the debate stage, but what kind of a factor was he? Excuse me, as a so-called minority in the Republican Party, a party that says it's not a racist party. What kind of factor was he? He was a blip on the radar screen. Now, our position here at Soluble is that he's way more qualified than the leading Republican candidate right now to contend with Joseph Biden for the Oval Office. He's way more qualified than the former president, Donald John Trump. But yet he's only polling at 3%. Why? He's backed the president more often than not. He's he's championed the president's ideals, so to speak. So he definitely has the MAGA brand, somewhere in his politics, but yet he's still at 3%. This is the vast difference between the parties, and we have to bring it out to light in order to let America see where we're at and why. We don't have the answer to the why, but that is the question. Why? Well, first and foremost, we know that it's because we got to get that vote out and send that strong message with that blue wave. But 3% right here, and it remains to be seen. We know he's better qualified than the former president, Donald John Trump. But as a Negro in the Republican Party, our position here is Soluble at this point in time in American history is that, Senator Scott in the Republican Party, he's like a woman of the night that every man wants to lay and play with, and drool all over. But as soon as the sun comes up, he doesn't want to be nowhere around her. Doesn't want to be nowhere near affiliated with her. Let anyone knows he's been affiliated with her. Nothing. He wants nothing to do with her. This is where the senator's at in today's Republican Party. And he's way more qualified than the current front runner. He's way more qualified. And so, as I said, in dealing with the politics of race, which is reared its ugly head because we've had the first African American president in American history. And the Republican Party, they did a so-called checkmate or thank you or pushback or we'll see your first African American president with another Caucasian, most bigoted, most racist, most prone to violence and lies president that we've seen in American history. Nothing about him says I'm qualified for the job. I'm more than qualified. And as I said, we can look at, for love of country, what the Democratic Party is doing and what the Republican Party is doing here. Regardless of race, the Democratic Party has put the best qualified candidate at that particular time in the year 2008. The best person forward for the job. Now, we know that the former president, Barack Obama, went to school at Yale. If I'm not mistaken, he may have had a stint at Harvard, some of the more prestigious Ivy League schools in the country. And, it's all out there for the American people to see. Now, by the same measurement, by the same standard, we know that former President Donald J. Trump went to the Wharton School of Business, Wharton Business School, or something to that effect. Now, but it's not out there for the public to see. What's his grades like? What was his performance like? So you have the Democrats, putting forth the best qualified candidate whose school history, whose college history is like an open book for the American people. And then you have the former president Donald J. Trump, who is threatening lawsuits, is threatening to sick his lawyer dogs onto the officials or representatives at the Wharton Business School if they make his grades public. Now we know that the former president Donald J. Trump loves praise being heaped upon him, and if these grades, were what he claims that they are, we would think that he would let us see him. He wouldn't have to put his law dogs out there to scare these officials at the Wharton Business School. So there you have it. One comparison between the two former presidents. One put forth by the Democrats, one put forth by the Republicans, regardless of race. One has the school records open for the public. One doesn't. Now, if the former president, Donald J. Trump, doesn't want his grades, publicized or for the public to see, maybe he's not as smart as he says he is. Think about it. If the former president, Donald J. Trump, doesn't want his taxes to be revealed, he doesn't want to disclose his taxes, as all former presidents have, as a measuring stick to let the American people see, what they've done, what they've dibbled and dabbled in. This is how my financial house looks. So you can trust me to govern your financial house. As it relates to we the people sending this person up to be, the steward in the highest office of the land. So if the former president, Donald J. Trump, doesn't want to show his taxes, maybe he's not as rich as he says he is. Now, here you have a president claiming to be smart and wealthy, but he won't let anyone see just how smart he is or how wealthy he is. Roadblocks, all kind of deterrents, all kind of excuses to be made. Like I say, I'll put my lawyers on you. And this all from a man who loves to have praise heaped upon him. He's such an egomaniac. Don't you think that for 1 minute, if the president had these high marks at the Wharton School of Business, that he would want it out there so people could sing the praises of just how smart he is, just how intelligent he is. He loves that. He loves that kind of praise heaped upon him. But yet we can't see it. We can't see it. Here we have, the former president once again contending for the highest office in the land. And yet, he wants to keep things from the American people. We can't get full disclosure on anything. And yet the president is saying, don't trust government, trust me. Well, the current president, Joseph R. Biden, has released his taxes to the public. They found bits and pieces of classified information here or there at one of his homes. He gave full disclosure to search, turn everything upside down and make sure that I don't have nothing left over from my years as vice president. I don't think it goes as far back as his Senate years, but he's an open book. And so, we're not going to solve this problem unless, Republicans have this come to Jesus moment. Or if we as Democrats don't show up at the polls and, create our own blue wave. And this is not to say that, this is a cure-all, because it's still a work in progress once we get that majority. But, I can't help but to reemphasize that this is a check and or pushback, if you will, on African-American voting power, African-American power in general in America, what they have gained and what and the gains that we are continuing to make in the country, And it frightens the hell out of Republican politicians. And as I said, we've always had it. We've always had a pushback when, the powers that be from racist Caucasian circles in America feel as if, their grip on power is being threatened. And so this is where we are. This is what produced forth a Donald J. Trump as president of the United States of America. Because those people that dwell in those circles, those backwards thinking circles of yesteryear, came up with the brilliant idea that the former president, Donald J. Trump, was the man to be a checkmate on that power. And we've seen it. We remember the fine people on both sides, the president having, trouble denouncing hate groups. We've seen it. And so, here we are. Here we are heading into what we thought would be an election between the current president, Joseph R. Biden, and anybody but the former president. But yet and still, the Republicans, politicians and voters alike, are clinging to former President Trump for, reasons that we're having trouble wrapping our minds around. Other than the fact that the president is blunt and straightforward when he comes to, America first. And that's not to say that Democrats are not for the same thing, but it's a way about going about achieving that for all Americans. For all Americans. And so, know, rest assuredly and know that this is pushback, as I've stated, to that from that 90-something plus percentile. Now, of the two parties, you have seats at the table here. You have seats at the table to have a voice. And now is the time more than ever to use it. It's a use it or lose it situation. You have nothing on the other side. As I've stated over and over, water carriers. Water carriers. And that's it. Until proven otherwise. Now, we know that former Governor Haley, President Katina Ramaswamy, they did quite well in the debates. They featured prominently in the Republican primary debates. And, the same way we feel about Senator Scott. They're both better qualified to be president of the United States. Former Governor Haley, the first female president of the United States, she's better qualified. Candidate Ramaswamy, I don't think he's ever held a political office, not that we know of here at Soluble, but he's better qualified. We don't know what fresh ideas he may have now. We know he's doubling down on anything MAGA, but maybe he would do something different. But rest assured, and take it from us here at Soluble, that we feel as, if anyone is better than the former president and the current front runner now in the Republican Party. We're going to, break it down issue by issue going forward as the debates loom, as the debates continue to narrow this field down to get the one and only candidate who is going to face President Biden. Now, we feel here at Soluble that former governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson, is a Republican candidate who can bring back common sense, conservative values to the halls of power and begin to, debate from a position of compromise, of reaching across the aisles. We feel that former Governor Hutchinson, would be, from our point of view here at Soluble, the person for the job, out of all the candidates that are currently running. But that's just our position here at Soluble. It's not our party. It's not our platform to determine, who is going to come out, emerge the winner here to face our guy, Joseph R. Biden. But at this point in time, as we await the second debate, we know that there's nothing fresh and new. There's nothing fresh and new here. We're going to start off with the economy. Our first breakdown, and show you the difference between the Democratic approach to a sound economy, a good jobs market, and a conservative approach, to a vibrant job market and a sound economy. Trickle down economics, compassionate conservatism, or whatever you want to call it. We know how it works, how it has worked in the last administration. And, we're going to break it down and let you decide, which one works best for you. Which job market, which economy, revenue producing machine, whether it's, from the left or from the right, which one works best for you, giving you the stark differences and the whys of it all going forward. But as of this particular moment in time, this is where we're at. There's a pushback on certain power structures in America, and so this is where we are. Our position here at Soluble is that the most qualified, regardless gender, race, etc., but the most qualified with the best plan to lead America forward is where we're trying to get back to. Irrelevant of race, ethnicity, birthright, regardless of parents, who is best qualified to lead America forward. This is where we want to go, which brings us, back to the middle ground. Because that's what we've always tried to do as Americans, regardless of party, to put our best and brightest forward. That's what we tried to do, always tried to do. Now we're questioning, from our colleagues on the right. We can't help but to question. For the last two Republican presidents, George W., and we thought it couldn't get no worse as far as intellect. We know that Karl Rove was his brain. And this was the first time, in American history where we heard something, this graphic and in this much candid detail and this much of a matter of fact. All presidents have advisors. All presidents have advisors, don't get me wrong. But this was the first time in American history where we actually heard, this being said, that this individual was the president's brain. And it would only lead one to think, what's wrong with the president's own brain? That he has to have, rely on someone else's brain in order to run the country. And, we have to take a long look at that, because we're electing one individual, but then this said individual is going out and using someone else's brain who we didn't elect to actually tell him what to do in running the country. And then from George W. Bush, to Donald J. Trump, the last two presidents from the Republican Party. And it is what it is. We've got what we've got. Former President Trump took an oath. He raised his right hand. He took an oath to protect, defend, to serve from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And shockingly, we didn't know that would include himself, because we've never seen anything like this before. Well, the first time in history we had a former president who doesn't want to go along with the peaceful transfer of power. There's no other way, in this current political climate that we're in right now. One of the best ways out of it for us as a country is Democrats. We have to rally now more than ever. We have to rally to do it again. To make the second time around just as good, if not better, than the first time. as far as our willingness to show up at the polls. Now we know there have been restrictions put in place, roadblocks, stumbling blocks, or whatever. We've seen it before. We've seen it before where there have been all kind of impediments, placed in our way to try to keep us from voting or to discourage us from voting. Now, as we've stated here on Soluble, to that 90-something plus percentile of African Americans who are voting Democratic. What does the political climate look like? What does the American social order look like today? Is it more peaceful than it was under a MAGA administration? And if the answer to that question is yes, then we must rock the vote again. We must go out again because, as I said, this is a pushback on your power. When you protest, you're mocked, you're laughed at, you're scorned. When you vote, there's a serious anger. There's a serious resentment in the country, especially from our colleagues on the right and Republican voters. So this ought to go a long ways in telling you where your true power lies at. And, now is the time more than ever to stand up on that fact, push forward. We've learned from former President Obama's years, when in his words, and true to form, he took a shellacking in his first midterms. When we put our candidates in, we're going to have to give them a strong backing in Congress also. We have to show up for those midterms, or little to nothing gets done. Now we see where we're at now here currently. Hunter Biden is being investigated, and from our colleagues on the right, it's all the rage. This is where the clear and present danger is at, as far as they're concerned. It's Hunter. It's Hunter all the day long. And, these meaningless investigations will go on and on and on. But we know that being voted out of office will get a politician's attention quick. Nothing will get a politician's attention quicker than having him voted out of office. And so this is what's before us now. We didn't necessarily, take our eyes off of the prize during the midterm, but hey, the Republicans gained a majority. They have a majority in the House. Now we see what they're doing with it, with so many current important issues that are affecting the country daily. The best that they can do with their majority is an impeachment inquiry. Into what? Into what? If it's something there, bring it to the forefront. Bring it to the forefront. And we have to be smarter than this as, American citizens. We see where it's at. Are we an intelligent country or we're not? We've been down this road before. And the only reason that we will be going down it again is if we don't engage in the political process. It's all about, are you going to govern or are you going to be governed? Are you going to govern or are you going to be governed? And this is, to all of my Democratic colleagues, but, especially that 90-something plus percentile in particular. This is a pushback on your power. And we know that as a so-called minority, there are things that are happening in our communities and to us as individuals that wouldn't be happening, if we took those seats that we had at the table and used them wisely, to give our input on what's best for us as a nation, first of all, as a country, to us as a community, as an ethnic group. It's best to have those seats at the table. You don't have them in the Republican Party. They're all lockstep. They're marching to the beat of one drum. You can't, you can't have, you won't hardly hear Senator Scott, Larry Elder, or any other so-called minority especially of African American descent in the Republican Party, when they look at Black Lives Matter, do they feel pressure to say that this is a terrorist organization? Is that how they really feel as African Americans in the Republican Party, or do they feel pressure? Can they come on the record and say, Soluble is calling it, like we see it, and we're calling it out? Now, at the same time, we just had here a couple of weeks ago, right here in the city of Jacksonville, Florida, a hate crime attack where 3 individuals were shot just going about their daily lives, just going about their daily business, shot simply because of the color of their skin. Is this not a domestic terrorist attack? So, for our colleagues on the right, regardless of race, if you're gonna say that Black Lives Matter, state it unequivocally that it's a terrorist organization, then you have to, by the same measurement, label these attacks that are happening to African American citizens in America simply because of the color of their skin. They have to be labeled as domestic terrorist attacks. And this is what we have to champion as Democrats and Democratic voters. Are we going to champion going after terrorists across seas who are committing terrorist attacks on foreign soil, to maybe foreigners, to maybe American citizens abroad? But are we going to, seriously prosecute and go after zealously terrorists who are abroad, but not put in check domestic terrorism that happens right here in our own backyard? And the Republican politicians are looking the other way. Where have they come out on the record? You have the governor, he comes off the campaign trail when this heinous attack happens, and labels this young kid a scumbag. But yet, when it comes to the history books, and the same oppressive attacks, the same oppressive, things that have been happening to Negroes in this country for years and years and years, he doesn't want it to be stated. Once again, this is the Republican Party wanting to have it both ways. What levels of hypocrisy? And if we see them in the Democratic Party, a hypocrisy by the same level, we have to call it out. But what levels of hypocrisy here? And we're going to break it down to you to show you that for everything that the Republicans, they come out and accuse the Democrats of, you find it within their own ranks. And in some of these situations where they're calling out for, as far as Democrats are concerned, there's no proof there. There's no there. But yet, we have, clear and precise evidence. One example, you have the former mayor, America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani. He's being investigated and are charged for disparaging, the poll workers' names down there in Georgia, saying that they're passing out ballots like they're vials of heroin, and they're taking them to court, rightfully so. For scandalizing them, for having them harassed, death threats. You see no evidence of it, but the former mayor, stated it emphatically that they were passing around ballots like vials of heroin. Now, as far as evidence to go with the statements, to back up the statements, nothing. But then you look around and you see, well, okay, what's happening in Coffee County? Small town Douglas, Georgia. My oldest sister went to college over there. But here you have small town Douglas, Georgia, Coffee County. What are these people who are not even they don't have the credentials, they don't have the passes, they don't have the qualifications to be back behind the desk in this election office. But yet here they are, meddling with ballots, checking ballots. And so we're going to break it down to you. For all the things that, the Republicans call out that the Democrats are doing, where we see little to no evidence, we see it with them. And, so we're in a quest to solve here. Because, we're down to, we're walling in the mire now, because in spite of all the things that has the potential to affect this country in a negative um, way, in a way that hurts our pocketbooks, hurts us in foreign policy, hurts us when it comes to loss of life, loss of property, with all the natural disasters that we're having. We have a lot of things that's affecting us in our everyday lives. And so to not push back would be to, stay wallowing in this mire to our own destruction. And so, we have to tell it like it is. Are we going to, looking at two former presidents, judging on the merits only, not on appearance, not on skin tone, but the merits only? And we get what's best for us all as Americans. There may be a little give and take, or reaching across the aisle, more compromise from the left or more compromise from the right. But we have a sound, functioning, working government. When we take the politics of race out of it, you have the former president, Trump coming in and saying, "Well, these are Obama judges." You never heard this before. You never heard this before. When a judge made a ruling, that was a ruling based on the will of the people. Because when former President Obama was in office, he didn't steal it. He didn't hijack it. He didn't lie, cheat, and or steal to get the first term or the second term. The American people put him there. The American people put him there, and they gave him a job to do based on the things that he said on the campaign trail. They gave him the job, and they expected him to deliver. And that's what the former president moved forward to do. The will of the American people, of his constituents, the party, et cetera, et cetera. And it had nothing to do with, I'm the first African American president in the nation's history. And so I'm finna cut a check for reparations for every Negro in America. Or I'm finna create legislation that gives, an unfair advantage to Negroes against Caucasians. Nothing. He was the first African American president, but he was president of the United States for the American people, whether you voted for him or not. He took his ideals, which were democratic ideals of building the economy from the middle class out, championing the middle class, and he rolled up his sleeves and went to work. And it worked great for America for 8 years. For 8 years. And so, it's important that we get out of wallowing in the mire of racial politics or the politics of race, and, get back to taking a sensible approach of, who is best qualified to lead the country, regardless of race. Now, you have Democrats and by most accounts, independents who have moved on from the politics of race. But yet and still, here we have the Republican Party, the spinoff of a Dixiecrat revolt from the days of Strom Thurmond, who are still stuck in the politics of race. And it serves no great purpose in moving the country forward. It serves no great purpose. So breaking issues down, issue by issue, to see what works best for America and which party and or candidate can get us there the fastest, the easiest, the best way. That's what it's all about. We're going to expose hypocrisy on both sides. If it's there. If it's there, not to, expose hypocrisy that is being committed by Democrats to make Republicans look good. Or not to expose hypocrisy being committed by Republicans to make Democrats look good or feel good. But our goal and objective here at Soluble is to put the facts out there in order to do what's best moving the country forward. What's best moving the country forward. And until, the next debate, we'll observe. We'll keep looking to see, what's new here. But right now we're stuck, in the politics of investigating. Something's gonna have to give. We're having, as I said, we're getting ready to have to pay our bills again. And so, there's a debt ceiling showdown that could be looming again. And we have to get past that. We have to get through that, in the two-party system that we have. But other than that, we just don't see where our colleagues on the right are willing to govern with outstretched arms versus folded arms. And so, our mission here is to continue, bringing truth to light on each and everything, and talking about the economy, education in America, prescription drug prices, senior care. There's a lot of things that are going on that we could be doing better, that we're doing good now that we can be better at. There are things that are working well that we can fine tune to make work even better, and continue to be leaders of the free world. But it takes two to tango here, and so we're going to keep debating, keep chipping away issue by issue, hoping that we could bring common sense Republicans and Democrats to the table. Right now we have a military that's somewhat in crisis. Now, the will of the American people is that Democrats are in charge of 2/3 of government. And you would think that the distinguished senator from Alabama would see that there's nothing more important than getting these military vacancies filled. Nothing more important. And it's a sad situation once again where we don't see Republicans huddling up to talk some sense into the distinguished senator, to say, we need to have this, this fight through legislation. Bring a bill to the floor for a vote. And if we don't have the votes, let's let the military do what the military does. The military is not politically affiliated. It's a fighting body that's here to protect and defend the country. It's not politically affiliated one way or another. The right thing for the distinguished senator to do is to, as I said, bring a bill to the floor. If you have the votes, you will get your way. But the senator knows he doesn't have the vote. And so, what he wants to do is, since the Democrats have the majority and he can't get his way, he wants to do something nonsensical as what he's doing now by holding up all of these open slots. We've never seen it before. And this from a party in particular who champions the military. What's going on here? This is not a desperate times calls for desperate measures. This is something that can be handled in the halls of Congress. But yet, the senator is politicizing it, and, it's very damaging for the country, at home and abroad. Very damaging. And so, Democrats, we have to be paying attention to what's going on. Be lockstep and in tune with everything that's going on, because democracy depends on it. Depends on you paying attention and knowing what is the best decision to make for the country going forward as far as choosing a leader. So stay tuned. Voter beware. We thank you for joining us tonight. We're taking it slow, going into the second round of the Republican debates. And as I've stated, we're going to break it down to you issue by issue, as far as party viewpoint when it comes to each and every particular issue. But for now, we encourage you to stay tuned as we are here at Soluble. And, democracy is at stake, but there's no time to be alarmed. There's no time to panic. We simply just have to pay attention, apply ourselves, and, make sound judgment about who is best to lead America forward, from 2024 and beyond. And that's where we're at. So this is Soluble signing off. We thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to coming to you again soon here in the near future, often discussing all things politics. You know, challenging our lawmakers to be better, to be fair, and to work together to get the job done for we the people who have actually sent them up, you know, to the halls of power to do just that, work on our behalf. So until the next time we meet again, this is Soluble signing off, saying thank you for joining us. God bless and good night. This is Soluble signing out. Thank you.